trailer on west of it.
Yeah,
There's no trailers on the property that the other one.
they bought the trailers, and so that's what they wanted to turn the water back.
We don't have any record of in the current.
Otherwise, we have no record of that.
At the risk of running the meeting late, I'll propose we started at 1 minute past 3. Welcome to the Water Management Committee meeting, September 4th. What's happening to the year? Call to order. Do we have any committee or public comments? I don't see any publics. No publics. No committee? Okay, IWGA, I guess that's yours.
Yes, there was not a meeting. There was not a meeting this month that was canceled due to a lack of quorum. So there will, okay. There was there we go. There was no meeting this month due to a lack of quorum. There will be a meeting this Wednesday. So we'll see what happens at that meeting, then I can give a future update, but it will be the Wednesday after our board meeting, so. That's really all there is to
Okay,
discuss on
yeah,
that.
So, but should be an interesting meeting based on, well, what we may be talking about on Monday.
I'm assuming so.
We'll have to get you a flak jacket.
Yeah, I would like to make a comment based on the agenda, which says that the discuss feasible alternatives to the pipeline project. We were meeting with the GA today to discuss their agenda for their upcoming meeting. And they had put an item on there that was, water district. They were hoping the water district would come to their meeting and discuss the alternatives that we see to the imported pipeline project
At the next GA meeting?
at the next GA meeting. That seemed a bit premature, so we sort of, we had some discussions, and I believe that item was taken off, but I did tell them I would come back to the board, and that I think it is a good time for us, particularly in the consideration of what has occurred in the court case, where the judge has said that he's now going to hear have a safe yield trial, which could very dramatically change what is possible under Sigma if that safe yield was to change. And so I think just for the board's consideration, no action needs to be taken, but to consider whether at some point in time we should have a discussion about what we do believe are potential alternatives to the pipeline project.
I
Okay.
believe it's important that we get our information out there. If we do have alternative plans, we need to get them out and be very open, show everything that we can show, and show that we do have great ideas and that we've done research and we've got the science to back it. And let's look at some alternatives.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the board would disagree next Monday, and we'll be able to give you that guidance or support before the
No.
next GA meeting.
No, and I think it's huge, well, since we're discussing it with the release of our new paper, that we have the science to back, and it should be very good news to the Groundwater Authority, to the Navy, to everybody, that we actually have science to prove that we have a lot more recharge and our safe yield. So it's very important, and I'm glad to see that out finally.
Yeah, I think that's going to have a very interesting play on the next, I mean, it's, even if we were to give up some of that yield as we've forecasted, it's still more than what the GA was planning to import.
Correct. And then if we can come up with a recycled water plan with the city,
We're
we
even
could,
better off.
we're even better off by a couple thousand, 1,800 acre feet or so. So
It
it would
gives
be
them the growth.
very beneficial.
Yeah.
And it would allow for plenty of growth and with, everything we've got worked out.
Yeah, I would think, yeah, I'm having more and more trouble finding out why they might resist that.
Yeah,
It's not making sense.
myself, the same issue. I don't understand why anybody would want to resist it if we have the science to back it up, because it's great news for this valley, for everybody, for the Navy, for the Groundwater Authority. I mean, it should be
Right.
great news. So
Makes their job easier.
it does, absolutely. And we'll meet the requirements of Sigma by 2040, and we should be good.
Did you sat in on the executive meeting earlier?
Yes.
Did this topic come up during that? And did this make the agenda or do we need to?
They punted it to you. So
Okay.
we did have a discussion. They said, we think that's probably more of an appropriate topic for water management. So they said, they certainly seem to be in favor of having this discussion. And they said, but we thought the official recommendation to the full board should come from this committee.
Okay, well, just as long as there's something on the agenda that reminds us to make that recommendation.
Make sure that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, and if we could make that recommendation through the committee today to the board, that we would like to have it reviewed and explained and showed to the groundwater authority, I think that would be.
Yeah, it'd be great if we could do that by next week.
Yeah.
I think we know most of the options that we would be
Yeah.
putting on that list.
Yeah, and I'm not sure we're gonna be fully ready with a presentation for the groundwater authority at their board meeting.
No,
But I think we can certainly prepare and first give one here, perhaps in the next month, if that's the wish of the board, and say, here's what we see the potential futures could be and the potential options could be, and then follow that on with a formal presentation to the GA if the board desires.
Yeah, and along those lines, the amount of technical detail and arguments and discussions about why we came up with our decisions, we can put that off as long as we want to. I think
Yeah.
all we need to do is outline what are our proposals. You know, what are the things that we're thinking as an alternative to the pipeline? And just lay those out. So we're gonna do this, gonna do recycling, we're gonna do maybe LL, up north, maybe, right?
yeah,
More
yeah,
exploration
no,
of
the more we
that
get
sort
out,
of-
the more we get out, the better, because right now there's only one plan that anybody's looked at. And we need to show that we have alternate plans and we have ways to reach sustainability by 2040 as a water district and submit that
Mhm.
to them and show them. Because that way it can be submitted to the groundwater authority, it can go to state, it can go to Congress, and it could be submitted everywhere. So, but right now they're only looking at the groundwater plan that the groundwater authority created. So we need to get that out there. That's my feeling.
Yeah, I concur. Okay, so
Thank you.
we will make that nomination, George, and if the Water Management Group agrees that we need to do this, and we'll bring it forward to the board next week. And if they want to have private discussion on this, maybe it's closed session topic, and then we give an out brief of what the results of that closed session discussion was next week.
Okay, I'll get with Jim and we'll figure it out.
Awesome. Potential impact recycled water and districts' need for imported water.
I'll just reiterate what I've said a number of times. As we analyze SB 606 and AB 1668 and the limitations that, oh, thank God we have Jason here. As we look at the limitations that's going to put on the district in the long term out to like 2040, as they get down to 42 gallons per day per person, those numbers become potentially more restrictive than the Sigma numbers that we may have to live with and the allocation that we'll get ultimately. And certainly if the pipeline were to, you can envision scenarios where under those bills, maybe the water district is authorized 6,000 or 7,000 acre feet a year total because of, how many people we have and how much, there's a formula you go through and it says, this is all you can use. If they were to bring the pipeline to us and we were supposed to be doing in lieu, so we're have to use the water. Well, our current usage is 5,500. If that went to 6, and then it gets pushed to 8 or more because they're bringing imported water into our system, we might be capped off in that way. So it's really important to start looking at the balance of not just Sigma, but also this California conservation as a way of life. And which one of those will, in this 2040-ish timeframe be the more restrictive on what we can use and how that impacts, what we can actually accomplish. Because there are possibilities that could be so restrictive that no matter what allocation we get under Sigma, it's more restrictive. And that certainly impacts our ability to function. So the good news is that recycled water gives us a credit under the California Conservation as a Way of Life. So we do that, we get not only the benefit from Sigma, we get the dual benefit because we can take credit and have larger use and growth within the city because we're doing the recycled water. And that really only works if you're doing direct potable reuse, which we know we're not going to do, but it also credits if we do treatment and injection or percolation into the basin. So I think it's important for us to study that and to understand that it's becoming increasingly more important to us as we look at this other regulation and its potential restrictions on our ability to use water.
Is there a, of consideration as well for recycled water that you just take it to a point where it's not quite potable, but you're using it for things like agriculture,
That does
landscaping,
not,
or
that does not
construction?
qualify under, so they're very
has to
clear.
be potable?
It has to be either injected into a water, like an aquifer.
Okay.
Typically what they really try to do is they say what they really want is direct potable reuse, which is what we call toilet to tap. And that's, but they carved out an exception to that and said like, well, in addition to that, if it's being reused in the same manner because it's going back into your aquifer, they look at that as a similar reuse of the recycled water. So they carved out an extra exemption for that piece of it. So I'm not sure you get 100% credit. We're looking at, there's some numbers in there about 15% of is maybe your total yield. You can't use, that can't be more than 15% of what you use in total, I think was me and Jason were discussing as we we're really getting down into the weeds of this regulation at this point, but there is a credit that we will get. Jason, it is 15% of some number that we discussed?
It's 15% of your total production, so that's the max you can claim.
Yeah, so if we're using 6,000, whatever, 15% of 6,000 is what we can get credit for, well,
That's 900.
yeah, so that's 900 we're gonna need.
Yeah, it's real water.
Yeah,
No, it's imperative, and I think we need to meet with the city and we need to do whatever we can. We need to be on the same page with them, working with this wastewater and trying to come up with a use for it. That's
Yeah.
my opinion.
and the other thing I will say about that is I believe there's parts of the story that I don't fully understand. What they say is that, well, we offered the water district to have the recycled water, but I think there were certain conditions placed on that we were
Yeah,
not
like
comfortable
we
with.
wouldn't sue
There
them.
was conditions.
Yeah, so.
We
and-
wouldn't sue them.
And they, of course, in our private conversations, they keep bringing this up and they say, oh, well, we've already offered it to you and you turned it down. I think we need to clarify that it wasn't just offered for this with no conditions. We need to be able to clarify that. And, when you're in the meeting, I'm sure you can do that, but it is, if you need a copy of the letter or the conditions that were there, so you can clarify that, because the impression I got was they were going to sort of like, oh, well, we offered to give you this, and they don't really talk about those conditions that were attached.
Correct. We were meeting with the city, and I believe we need to start again, because I asked the Groundwater Authority, it's probably been 4 months, maybe 5 months ago, maybe longer than that, when they voted that it was too expensive to use. I said, does this open the district up to renegotiating with the city and letting us work a plan? And they said, yeah, we don't have a problem with that. And that was in a meeting. So,
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
yeah, I think it's imperative that we do that. So.
So where do we go from here? What would you think?
It would be my suggestion that we set up a meeting with the city manager, one of the councilmen, maybe Mr. Heyman, because he's on the Groundwater Authority Board, and probably the assistant city manager, so we could all meet and discuss it.
We could
And-
reopen that ad hoc
and-
meeting that you and I had.
Yeah, I think it would be
years
good.
ago.
I'm scheduled to have a meeting with Mr. Strand tomorrow morning. I'll bring up the thought to him.
Okay.
Ask him if he can help us set that up.
I think the more communication, the better.
Yep, let's give them a chance.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's not going to turn out real well, but I'll give them a chance.
Yep.
And you'll help get that started? George?
Yes, yeah, I'm going to meet with Mr. Strand tomorrow and we'll have a discussion about. how to
Awesome,
set that
thanks.
up.
Yeah, you might just mention, they might remind them of the ad hoc meeting, where we called it an ad hoc committee. It was
And that was,
Kyle, Ron, Chuck, myself.
so no more than two
Scott,
members
I
of
believe
our
Scott
board.
was there,
and-
wasn't
They
he?
came and did sit on one of those. Yeah.
So under the Brown Act, what constraints are in, no more than two of our board members?
Correct.
Or
2 board
Or
members.
no more than two of
Two.
ours, and then
no more than two of the cities?
maybe it was just 4 of us.
And then it would also be the same.
And Ron
As-
could come
as
because he's
me and
not a
Scott.
board member, just like I could come. 'cause
Correct.
I'm not a-
Yeah.
Oh, that's why
Bring-
they
and
had,
you can
that's
bring
why they had
staff.
Heyman and
Yeah.
Correct.
Kyle there.
Okay. We will go down that
And topic, specific topic is recycled water. I
Specific
don't want to
topic,
open
yeah.
up about the.
Now, our
safety
understanding
yield
is the
arguments.
No,
city's.
we don't want to
It's-
talk
it's-
about that. We don't want to argue. We just want a smooth conversation and let's just focus on recycled water. And that's what the ad hoc committee needs to be, is just recycled water, working together and moving forward.
Yeah, I think this is notwithstanding whatever happens elsewhere. At some point, we as the water district are going to need that recycled water.
Absolutely.
Right, and we're going to need their cooperation.
And they're going to need ours. We need to work together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For the betterment of the valley. Okay. Alternate water sources. Well, I guess we're going to have a little discussion about that next week. Did we have a topic? or-
No, I think I would say there's nothing significant to report under this topic that's since the last meeting. We have been focused on the adjudication and on recycled water and other things. So, it's not at the top. It's always something we need to think about, but nothing significant to report
Okay.
for this meeting.
Stan mentioned yesterday, you might recall, he was not sure if yesterday's meeting was the right place, the P&E meeting was the right place to bring this up, but he brought up something that we should consider in this committee, I think, which was tasking Tim once, well, it looks like most of his workload's gone away. He's got a break for a little while. Maybe we can load him up with some stuff, but to ask him to make a recommendation to us about where he would suggest that we do monitoring well installations.
Yeah.
And then we start thinking about that.
And I certainly,
As our part of our investment strategies, where we would maybe El Paso, whatever, but let Tim come back and with his knowledge of right now, deficiencies you have for measuring water in this valley, and there are a few.
yeah, and I don't think it's at this point a huge secret that Tim's got some work that he needs to finish up on. We've released
Right.
we're shortly to release, we believe, the safe yield paper. And there's some follow-up validation that needs to be done that's going to keep him busy. And after that, I think at that point, my personal recommendation is that we really need to get serious about digging through this caliche, doing some real percolation tests and determining whether injection wells, gravity-fed injection wells, or percolation is the best option to get water back into the aquifer, whether that's capturing runoff from LADWP, whether that's doing recycled water and getting it over there, and that'll help us with the cost analysis. I think that's the next big step, because one way or another, it doesn't matter whether you bring water in through a pipeline, you get water and treat it from the wastewater treatment plant. At some point, we have to have a feasible mechanism that we know can get it into our aquifer. And then that includes capture off of LADWP if they are, when they have storm events. I think that's really something we need to nail down, because it is going to have a big impact on the cost. And so that's my personal thought of like maybe what might be the next really good step for us to look into.
I think that's, all good stuff that we ought to have answers for. I think Stan might have been thinking about El Paso exploration
Correct.
as part of this.
Yep.
We still don't have enough information on that. And if our, if our safe yield numbers hold, that's going to open up some opportunities for us to mine the valley a little bit more. And there may be an opportunity for us to take advantage of El Paso. Don't know.
Well, I myself would like to look at the El Pasos. I would be more apt to put in a production well and actually use it and, develop it, test it. But it's going to be a little bit down the road, and I understand that. But if we've got an area in that basin that the water table is climbing, I think we should capitalize on that. And if
Yeah,
we
I
could
agree.
spread the pumping and eliminate some cones of depression
Mm.
with a short pipeline and, if it tied into the district, it could be even a groundwater authority project. I mean, it's as an alternative
What's
down the road.
what's the scale, the difference in between a monitoring well and a production?
Well, the monitoring well, you're just drilling a small,
Yeah, 4-inch,
small
6-inch.
small well, you're not going to develop it, you're not going to pump it.
Mhm.
A lot of the monitoring wells, they just airlift when they develop them instead of pumping them, getting the mud. So if you drill a production well, you've got a well that you can actually
Right.
lift and then test pump it, get the gravel open, get the gravel pack and use it so you can actually see what's happening. And when you pump at 2,000 or 3,000 gallons a minute. You see what your return to static is. You're using it, it's a developed well at that point. But a monitoring well, usually, and typically, they drill them, they lift them,
Physiometer.
and then they sit there. So,
Mhm. What's the rough difference in cost?
um,
Factor 10?
well, in the private sector, it's a lot cheaper. I mean, we could drill a nice production well, probably 250 to 300,000, but through the water district, we're looking, what, 1.2 million or so?
Is that all? I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot of money. to
Yeah,
me.
so
I mean,
that's,
it is not chump change, but.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, that's just the hole in the ground. That's no equipment.
that's, yeah.
Sure, right, yeah. Still got to put a pump in there and. you
Oh,
gotta-
yeah.
Yeah, get it. Okay.
Yep.
So did you capture your thoughts there that we could share with Stan and perhaps regarding what you think, Tim, as you've nominated, what you think Tim's next steps might be once he's got time on his hands?
Yeah, I think I'm good with that.
Future agenda items?
I have none.
Me neither.
Okay.
So we'll call the meeting at 22 past 3,
Perfect.
21 past 3.